Over the years, I've helped a lot of people get their CBP positions, not through some miracle, just through my testing, of course, right? But in that time of them taking the tests and passing those tests, I've also made some friendships. So what I do every half year, I do this I did not know about, and then I do a video about it. So people who became CBP officers, here's some of the things they didn't know about, and I want you to listen very carefully if you think about going into this career. So the first thing is that the first concern was, will I ever see my family? And the reason why the worry was there, because they realized that CBP, they work long shifts, rotating schedules. So people say, what do you mean by a rotating schedule? So you might be for a month working 8 to 4, right? And then for month 2, 4 p.m. to 12 a.m., right? Then month 3, 12 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then it starts all over again. So your body has to go through this constant flux of time, you know? When you're younger, it's not so bad, right? But when you're older, it might become an issue. Also, too, there is mandatory overtime. So not just OT, right? Mandatory overtime. And the money's nice, of course, right? But this happens a lot in the beginning of your career. You're gonna get these orders to go into work for mandatory overtime. So the worry because of all this is that people are missing their missing holidays, time with children, the spouses, of course, you know, and just the fact of it's a little difficult to maintain a relationship because of some of the pools of being a CBP officer, right? It's just there. The second one I got was, it was really great. They tell me that the concern was, where will I be assigned? Now, they tell you, oh, you can kind of ask to go here or there, but no. Many times, your first duty station is going to be an isolated border town, far from family, friends, or big cities. Yeah, true. You're not gonna get some glamorous place. Well, I live like in San Diego, right? So you're not gonna come here to San Diego, some beautiful post there in your first month or two. I mean, it's very rare. You know, it's almost impossible, but you will have to go into a border town probably. You're gonna be isolated for sure, because it's part of the first duty station. You gotta prove your stuff, you know, right? Now, that makes sometimes for you, here's a worry. Sometimes people get lonely, right? There's also a cultural adjustment. I've been in cities all my life. So for me to go from here to, say, some little tiny town, less than 2,000 people, well, there's gonna be a cultural adjustment, of course, right? It's gonna be kind of tough, you know? But that's what it's like in the beginning when you first have your first assignment. You're gonna be going somewhere remotely for sure. It's almost a guarantee. Danger, right? People say, is it dangerous? And so a lot of my people who come back at me with these answers, they say, first their concern was, if I become a CBP officer, is it dangerous? Yeah, there's some danger there. And then I told them to dig down further. Tell people who've never had that job before, who want to go into it, what does that mean? What's going on? And here's the answers. You're faced with armed smugglers, right? So maybe 30 years ago, it wasn't that bad, but now the smugglers are getting armed, right? So that's, you never know, right? Number 2, they always said unpredictable encounters. I myself, being in law enforcement in the past, I know this very well. So, some people come to you very nice. Next thing you know, you're on the ground with them trying to fight them, you know? Or some people are they look normal, they say something kind of weird, you know? So these things are always unpredictable. And also they say too, they have to worry about environmental hazards. Those are all great things, like the extreme heat, the rugged terrain, the maybe not good food, right? Not good nutrition, water. I mean, those are things you really got to think about, because your first post, your second post, you're probably going to be out there in the rugged terrain. Some posts require horses, jeeps, whatever, right? So just understand that. And so the worry was, I want to make sure I get home at the end of the day. And people say, oh, that's kind of silly. That's not silly at all, because when you're CBP, you don't know what that's all about, right? You have no idea. A biggie here, this came from Maryland. She's working now in San Antonio, I think it is. She said her concern was about, can I handle the human side of the job? The human side, that's a great thing, because you see on the news all the time, these many people detained, kids are being separated. To us, that's just a news flash, black and white on our social media, right? Oh, kids get detained. Oh, but she is saying, though, is that enforcing immigration sometimes for her, it was difficult, and it is today, for her to see the oversight of separating families. This is politics aside, okay? She's talking from a human point of view, okay? So don't get it all mixed up in all this nonsense, okay? Not talking about Democrats, Republicans. We're talking about the human side for her. For her experience is that separating families was difficult. And then she says also, I had to turn away asylum seekers to defer them to somebody else, outside. She didn't have that kind of power to deal with that. She had to refer them to somebody else, right? But she saw the desperation in some of these cases because they truly were, to her experience, truly asylum seekers, really trying to get out of the situation they were in. And sometimes she had to detain children. So those are things she was thinking about, because the worry for her was the emotional toll, the moral conflict, and maybe even the long-term mental health impact. Those are things I want you guys to think about. Yes, CBP is a great career, right? But every career has their heaviness to it, right? And this is part of the heaviness of CBP, okay? So just understand that. Ryan, he kills me. He's my friend now, actually. He took my test. He took the actual test. He scored like in the high 90s. He scored very high. He did very great on the test, but he's always saying, hey, thanks to you, but come on. I get 1% of that credit. That's all I get. But Ryan's saying here, he's right. Ryan's one of those type A guys. He just wants to get things done, right? So he was saying the hiring process, will I even get through it, right? That was his big concern. And Ryan lets me talk about him all the time, which I do because he's a good example. He's a great CBP person. So he said, I did not know the process was long, strict, and invasive. He says, Mitchell, it involved the polygraph, the background investigation, the fitness test, the training academy, and the hardest part was preparing for the exam. That was the hardest part because he had to get ready for that exam, and it was tough. So the thing he said was that he worried about failing even one step in the process and not being perfect enough to qualify. That's true. But what he said here, this should encourage you. I still tried, right? And he succeeded. So don't let this process, you guys, make you not want to do it. You should do it if you're so inclined to. Fill out the application, take my pre-exam, take the actual exam, get ready for the poly, the interview, all that stuff. Everything on this channel will ready you for all that stuff. I got a lot of videos here to prepare you, but Ryan says if you want to be a CBP officer, do it. Don't let these things stop you. But he says just understand what you're getting into. It's a process, and he's right about that. That's a great thing to say about that. Thank you, Ryan. Reputation of public perception. Now, since the advent of social media for the past 20 years, we're seeing a lot of people in uniform doing silly things now. They're being caught. Some of them are being caught, and some are being caught doing great things, right? But Cheryl's asking about how will people see me? Now, I met Cheryl she took our test. She didn't do that great at first, right? She took it again and again. Her third time, she aced it. Went off to take the actual exam, and she beat that too. So that was no problem for her at all. But Cheryl was worried about how people see her because she was worried about backlash, due to political debates. Okay, there we go to politics, right? But she's right because before it wasn't such a big deal. In the past 10 years, oh my gosh, a lot of what's going on, right? But she's boots on the ground. Right, we're reading social media posts all the time. We're just people reading the social media points, but she is boots on the ground. And she was worried about that because she didn't want to be judged or misunderstood by friends, family, or the public. Now, most people with common sense understand she's got a job to do. She has to protect us, right? I don't know how she's supposed to do that because it's not my purview. I just want her to do that, right? But she's saying is that the back end of that is people judge her for how she does it. She's doing her job per procedure, so she's worried sometimes about her reputation, but She says that is still not a reason to not go through the CBP process and become an officer. She is just saying that it's something for you to make sure you are aware of. And she's right. Be aware of stuff like that, because it's all part of the career. Last thing is from Stan and also Hank. They're both saying they want to know about career growth and retirement. Now, Stan especially, Stan is third generation CBP, right? Or some kind of border protection type career in his family, okay? So his father, he says, didn't get very high up there. But his father, he said, didn't really try either. His father liked to work the border. He liked to work at CBP posts. He didn't want to go anywhere. So he was happy where he was at. But now he wants to do advancement. So he was saying, is this really a lifelong career? Yes, it's a lifelong career. You get good benefits, you get retirement. But here's the thing he wants to let you guys know. The early years are tougher, right? Remote bases, remote areas you're gonna be out there, of course, not so glamorous the first 3 or 4 years, but like anything though, you gotta put your time in, right? It's not like this one overnight glamorous place you're working. No, you gotta put in your time. And he said though, because of that, some people are not realistic in the CBP. And he said, he wants me to tell you guys, be realistic in the CBP process because it's very important. It matters a lot. You have to understand it's a process, right? Even getting to a higher position in a better place to work, it's all a process, right? So there we go. I want to tell you guys, I implore upon you guys, do not walk in there taking that CBP test without taking my pre-test or you're going to fall on your face. Take it first, test yourself, then go for the real test. If you don't do that, you're going to follow 38% of people who fail the first time. It just delays everything and puts in self-doubt. Take the test here, instant test results, percentage result, and you get an email from me, a personal email from me, and we review your test together. Take care, you guys. Bye-bye.